Okay. Good morning all. Thanks for being with us today. It is a very big audience. We are very happy about that because the topic we are going to discuss, it is an important topic. So it is nice to see a big audience today. I'm Marta Ottaviani. I'm an Italian journalist and writer working mainly for La Stampa and Avvenire newspaper. I lived in Turkey for 8 years from 2005 and 2013. This gave me the opportunity to follow the ascent of Recep Tayyip Erdogan's power and unfortunately also the deterioration of democracy in Turkey. And I tried to explain what I saw in my book Il Reis come Erdogan ha cambiato la Turchia. Today I'm going to discuss with a very good colleague, and I can also already call her a friend of mine, Ece Temelkuran. She is a writer and journalist as well, and she also wrote a book on Turkey titled Turchia folle e malinconica, which is going to come out in the upcoming months. Ece, İtalya'ya hoş geldiniz. Katıldığınız için çok teşekkür ederim. Ece, welcome to Italy. Thanks for being with us today.
Grazie mille.
Okay, and today we are here today to discuss a very important topic which is gaining more and more power and importance not only in the media environment, a danger for journalists, for the civil society, for the public opinion, a danger we must learn to deal with and also defeat, if is it possible. We are going to talk about post-truth, post-verità in Italian. Last December, Ece wrote a very interesting article on Guardian newspaper. The title was absolutely meaningful. Truth is a lost game in Turkey. Do not let the same thing happen to you. To summarize, in this article, Ece has described how in the last time in Turkey, to deliver a political message, it is enough to be populist, to be charismatic. You don't need facts. You don't need to be reliable anymore. And sometimes even the press, especially if journalists for first have fear or are willing to share this message, starts to believe in the post-truth. So we will try to explain today how the political message in Turkey changed in the last 15 years and if change is irreversible or not, and above all, what the Turkish case can teach us. Before making my questions to Ece, we will speak about for 45 minutes or something like that, and then considering that we have such a big audience, we will leave 15 minutes time for your questions. So, dear Ece, my first question, here is my first question for you. In your article, you date back the building of the new truth in Turkey, as you wrote, almost 15 years ago. Can you tell us how it started?
Hello, welcome. It's so nice to be here with Marta and you. And I'm just back from New York, so I'm totally jet-lagged, and I guess I lost my good part of my IQ somewhere over Atlantic. So, you know, excuse me if I sometimes go like blackout or anything. Yeah, Turkey is a crazy country now, and unfortunately, I think it is now in that category of countries where anything can happen. Which is absolutely painful to follow, and which is very disappointing for me as well. And this matter obviously is close to my heart. But Turkey was once was not such a crazy country. Like 15 years ago or so, we had a different place, and now many people like me do not feel like they are totally at home when they're in Turkey, although they are from Turkey. Many people think that, I'm like, the cameras or the journalists' gaze turn to a country when the things are over almost, when the things got really out of hand, when everything starts happening, like when things get really into a chaos, when people are shouting and so on and so forth. And most of the time, we as journalists, I should say, do not have the time to see the backstory. And Turkey becoming a crazy country didn't happen in a day. And nowadays on international media, you see Erdogan's face whenever there's any piece of news about Turkey. Whenever I write anything about Turkey, even though I don't mention his name, they put his photograph on newspapers or magazines I write. We became sort of a duo now. But then it didn't start with Erdogan, and it wasn't all about Erdogan. And it's now easy for a journalist or for a commentator to make everything about Erdogan, because this is the trend now. This evil guy is turning Turkey into a hell house or something, which has not been and is not the case at all. People think that fascism is something like evil guys coming to a place, beating up the good guys and taking over and then ruling. It doesn't happen like that. It takes a lot of time and a lot of intellectual work to build up fascism. And it takes a lot of rewriting of history as well, which is one of the important points that I want to underline. Before going back to 15 years ago, maybe it would be very effective to give an example of today from United States. Yesterday, I read an article about Mexico in New York Times, and it was telling about how Trump was making up things about Mexico and how he was rewriting the near history of relations of Mexico and the United States. And I thought, well, welcome to our life. This is what started happening 15 years ago in Turkey. In order to rule, you need intellectual legitimization. And what happened 15 years ago, before Erdogan came to power even, was the legitimization of this political power, AKP, now the ruling party in Turkey. And it took a lot of rewriting of history. It took a lot of intellectuals lining up near to the power. And it took a lot of lying. Well, some of us here are old enough to know that post-truth is actually lying. And and then I'm very, it wasn't Erdogan who did this. It was actually the intellectuals that were circling him, around him. Because they were the one who produced the narrative of real people and real democracy. Now we see this in Europe. So it's very easy to explain what's going on, about the rising populism, about the right wing. 15 years ago, it wasn't that easy. All the international media that is now, insulting Erdogan or criticizing Erdogan, so to speak, they were dancing around him. So it wasn't only the local intelligentsia, but also the international intelligentsia who gave him the power, if you will. And this real people bringing real democracy thing was actually not the invention of Erdogan himself. I don't know if we have to go through that, go to this, the political and philosophical base of the whole thing, but it all started with Karl Popper and Karl Popper's idea of excluding the intelligentsia from the truth-building process, which is now turned into mobilized and organized ignorance, not only in Turkey, but all over Europe. But that's another matter. I think we can discuss it later on.
Yeah, you have already, by the way, replied to my second question, that is, who was the biggest headmaster of this process? But when I was in Turkey, it was 2006, if I remember well. One of the strongest messages of the AKP, which is Erdogan's party, ruling the country since 2002, was tam üyelik tam demokratik, which means full membership to the European Union, full democratization. And people were believing that, even if in the country there were signals who went in the total opposite direction. So, if I tell a lie, of course I tell a lie and I do something wrong, but my question is, why in your opinion people decided to believe in the new truth Erdogan and the intellectual cycle you mentioned created?
Few months ago, before the American election, I would say that Erdogan is a brilliant politician who manages to identify himself with the masses. But then now there is Trump, who is obviously not a very brilliant politician, and he manages to do that as well. He identifies with himself with the uneducated, misogynist, populist masses. So I think people in general, masses in general, want to believe in something, and they don't really care if the leader is telling the truth or not. We're in a journalism festival, and we are talking about truth and facts. And this has been going on for several months, especially after Trump's election. It has become, gigantic, this topic of fact-checking, fake news and truth, what is the truth, whose truth is this, and so on and so forth. But I do think that, especially answering your question, this is important to underline. I do think that this is bigger than journalism. This is far bigger than fact-checking. It is far bigger than fake news. This is a political issue, and unfortunately, it's a global one. Well, actually, I'm quite happy it has become a global one, because I had really hard time 10 years ago when I was trying to explain what's going on in Turkey in Harvard or in London School of Economics, because they were thinking that I am this person, against the real people, or people like me were the oppressive elite who are trying to exclude the real people of Turkey from the real democracy, and so on and so forth. But now we can go into this bigger picture where there are people who want to believe Erdogan. This is why I said, when doing the news about Turkey or United States or, Netherlands and so on and so forth, we put the picture of these people, of these, outrageous leaders, making it all about them. So it is as if nowadays on international media, news are if we can get rid of Erdogan, everything will be awesome. Unfortunately, it's not like that, because you have millions and millions of people who are supporting him. So what are we going to do with the clones of Erdogan, millions of them, this little minions of Erdogan, so to speak, going banana? So this is I do want to, pull this whole thing out from journalism and make it bigger, a more philosophical question. What is the perception of capitalism of human being? What is this human being expecting from future? And where did the political procedure after Berlin's walls fall took us now? Very quickly, I want to tell that after Berlin Wall came down, the triumphalism of Western world about their very nice capitalism was outrageous. So therefore, there was no space for another ideology, and the most fashionable statement was, well, I hate politics, it's so boring. This is the ultimate and the most dangerous political statement you can ever make. But this statement actually led the way to those populist leaders to rule in their countries. And Erdogan is only one of them. Because all these people who hate politics decided to, go with this guy who says that he is beyond politics. This is what Erdogan did in Turkey, and this is what Putin did in Russia, and this is what Trump wants to do in the United States. They want to present themselves as if they are beyond politics, which everybody hates. And this all started with exclusion of socialist ideas, exclusion of left, exclusion of leftist intellectuals from the intellectual discussion, and therefore now ignorance, unfortunately, became a cultural identity. So we are now living in this world where identity is the only way to do politics, which I think very, very dangerous. Especially sexual identity became like the most important thing. I mean, I don't know why everybody's talking about who's fucking who, but you know, this is the only way. This is the most popular way of doing politics now. And when ignorance becomes a cultural identity, guess what? Now you have to respect them. So this is what happened in 15 years in Turkey. One of the minions of Erdogan or Trump, or imagine any similar leader, could tell you that, you know what, world is flat, if you ask me. And then you say, well, that's not true. And then he goes, this is my truth, and this is my identity. You have to respect it. This is the base of what we are going through. And then it becomes political, and then it becomes en masse, and then you have a populist, not only a leader, but also ignorant society. This is actually what happened on the undercurrent of near political history of Turkey. And Erdogan has just put a face on it, his own face.
Okay. Ece, I do share your opinion when you say that is not a problem related only to the media, but it's a political issue, and I do share your opinion at all. But when you talk about post-truth or the building of a new truth, media have an important role.
Exactly.
And so my next question is, which has been the role of the media in Turkey while Erdogan and the intellectual cycle were building the new truth? Because I was in Turkey at that time, and the Turkey media system was split in two, against Erdogan, pro-Erdogan. Now, unfortunately, we have only almost pro-Erdogan newspapers left in Turkey. Now there are only 4 opposition newspapers in Turkey with a very little audience. I think less of 50,000 copies, so a very little audience. But that time, there were more. So, which was the role of the media in creating the Erdogan phenomenon? Quite a tough question, I know.
No. I was thinking of yesterday again, because, seeing these things, what happened to you is happening to other people, gives you a bitter smile. When I'm reading about United States, I go like, yeah, really, okay. Yeah, this is what's going to happen to you. But I couldn't remember the name of the guy. What's the name of that guy from Newsweek? Anyway, he's one of those, big established media names, like mainstream. He said, after Syria bombardment, he said, now Trump became the president of the United States. This is how it begins. Now he has intellectual legitimacy. And there'll be a lot of intellectuals, especially from Republican side. It will start with Republicans, and then it will spread to Democrats as well. Because he did something they wanted, he's going to become their president. This is what happened in Turkey. Erdogan's, one of the most important thing was this full membership to European Union, and the other thing was Kurdish issue, and the other thing was why do we exclude gypsies? Why do And he talked to all sectors of life, but just words, and everybody was happy. It was too good to be true in a way. And then when you look at his party's political history, I'm like, that these guys are not Democrat. They are opportunists, like there is no tomorrow. But yet again, everybody was happy with what's going on. I remember one anecdote which sort of symbolizes what happened in Turkey and this intellectual legitimization process. in this starting of the second term of AKP, when, in his words, Erdogan became the master of politics, a big political case started in Turkey, a class action, which we called Ergenekon. It was hundreds of people were imprisoned, and there was this alleged conspiracy, a plot against the government, and it was run by army members, intellectuals, and academics, lawyers.
Prosecutors.
Huh?
Some prosecutors also were.
Prosecutors, journalists, and so on and so forth. This case was so big that they had to build a gigantic prison to imprison the people. And there was a courthouse within that prison. So, while this case was happening, the general impression that media produced was that this case is against those who want to do a military coup against the government. So, therefore, this case is against those who are anti-democrat. So, they established an intellectual atmosphere where so that you criticize AKP, you became the anti-democrat, you became the supporter of a coup, and so on and so forth. This country has been through some confusion, similar confusion with Berlusconi. You had your intellectuals supporting him who were, leftists a while ago, and then they become Berlusconi supporters. So you might understand how you can confuse a mass, how you can confuse the intellectual arena, and so on. Anyway, and I remember those days with a bitter smile again, and there was this leftist intellectual. And this class action was getting out of hand. Everybody's become Ergenekon supporter. Everybody's making complaints about each other for being an Ergenekon supporter, and so on and so forth. And I was speaking to this older colleague of mine, whom I respected until then. I said, this is going out of hand. We have to criticize this. We have to do something, because this is against the sense of justice. You cannot put everybody in the pigeon of anti-democrat once they if they want to criticize the government, and so on and so forth. You know what he said? He said, you know what? Just don't say anything, because now they are taking care of the army people. Once we get rid of them, we can do our thing. Do you get the picture here? Erdogan was doing something that he wanted. Therefore, he was fine with the damage that is done on the law system, on the sense of justice. So he was actually being part of the vendetta cycle that Erdogan started. So once you do that, you don't have a right to speak about another case that will target you. You don't have you will not most probably have a chance to say anything when everybody is taken into prison who said things that you didn't like. So this is what happened in Turkey. One case for seculars or, critics of the Erdogan. One case for Fethullah Gülen supporters, just like that now it's happening after 15th of July coup attempt. And one case for Kurdish people. And there is always one side who is happy about how things are going. So it was a process of damaging not only the intellectual atmosphere in Turkey, but the daily life itself. And then, it doesn't stop there on the intellectual level. It goes to the daily life and the polarization. And the cycle of vendettas actually capture your life. It starts getting into your body even. So that's why Turkey is a crazy place now, because everybody hates everybody is afraid, and the polarization is not only between two parties, it's in between neighbors, and people are afraid of the neighbor that he could make a complaint about him being a I don't know what, and they could end up in prison. This is sort of complicated, maddening, and not easy to tell. So I don't know if I'm clear enough.
Okay. I remember the Ergenekon days very well because almost every day I had to go to Silivri, which is this very big prison with the tribunal inside, and it's almost 70 kilometers from Istanbul, so it was also not very comfortable. And to conclude this topic, this question, last year, in 2016, there was a ruling, if I remember well, of the Council of State that said that there were no proof enough to demonstrate that Ergenekon really existed. So most probably it was a total fake phenomenon, totally invented just to put people in trouble. And it's interesting because now some people related to the Ergenekon case supports Erdogan and were behind Erdogan when Erdogan tried to defeat the coup plotters during the coup of last July. And at the opposite, now Gülenists are in jail. Why at the Ergenekon time Gülen and Gülenists were the first ally of Erdogan. Yeah. So it's a very difficult situation to be explained, but it is a good demonstration to show how what you cannot demonstrate in the post-truth era, you can create it, even it is totally false. So it is something really worrisome. But in fact, my next question...
Before going to next question, maybe I should say that this is not the invention of Turkish people. It's not like, crazy Turkish people brought this to the world. Or not even invention of Putin, which seems to be the only guy who has a plan at the moment in this planet. But, when speaking of post-truth and making obvious lies, and and people wanting to believe these lies, that process, my mind somehow goes back to Gulf War. People, journalists. Nowadays we are all talking. By the way, I lost my job. I'm no more a journalist, but I'd like to speak this way. So, journalists are discussing when did we lose the trust of the reader, when did this post-truth era begin, and so on and so forth. I remember Gulf War and CNN, and anyway, I won't tell the name of the correspondent. The correspondent speaking while these lights, the bombardment is happening. And the bombardment was like the fireworks, because the CNN correspondent was speaking in front of them. It was happening real time. And for some reason, this, real-time journalism became as important as the war itself, if not more important. So it was like, a nation is going through an extreme tragedy. People are dying. And meanwhile, on the other side of the planet, these guys sitting at their home and watching this as if firework party is going around. So I think that was the moment that we entered the post-truth age, because it was as if this whole thing was not real. It was as if this whole thing is just like fireworks, happening and so on. That was the moment. And then I remember another moment where, what's the name of that guy? American foreign minister showing the tube. What was his name? Colin Powell. Like, it's like ancient history. Colin Powell holding this tube and obviously not even believing himself and showing in the UN this tube, and everybody nodding. That was another milestone in post-truth. And then on, it got carried away. We had Afghanistan, we had Iraq, we have Syria now. So post-truth is not something new. And if you look at it from a certain perspective, it is ancient even. It has always been there. But what's new is this mass media and the variety of truths and the strength of producing them. and them becoming influential and so on. Yeah, this is what I wanted to say.
Okay,
Sorry.
thanks for your thoughts. So, now coming back to Turkey, we are talking about more or less 15 years of Turkish history.
Mm-hmm.
As you told, and you are right in telling so, the building of a new truth, it is a very slow process, almost crawling. But in your opinion, when the situation went out of touch?
Well, this is, I think, the brand of this time we're going. You feel like, well, it cannot get worse than this. And then it does. So I don't really remember how many times that I said, like, this is the end. But post-truth thing, I guess, imprisonment or in several ways silencing the journalists made the, end game. Because now there are no people who would say, you're lying. But then I don't even know if you say that, it will work. I was in Copenhagen, and Nigel Farage was there. And I was in the same panel with Nigel Farage. He was the key speaker. You
Lucky
never know. And then I was telling, and the German journalist, who is a well-established one, couldn't stop himself. And he said, you are lying, Mr. Farage. You are lying. And Farage was like so proud of himself. And he didn't really give a damn about, this journalist or him thinking that he's lying. And then I said, okay, this is what's going to, make you crazy in coming years. Because this is like playing chess with a pigeon. This is what the Guardian article was about. Because even if you play perfect chess, this pigeon would scatter the pieces with his wing and then shit on your chessboard and then proudly fly away. This is what messes with people's minds. And this is what happened in Turkey. This is what's happening in Europe as well. You go, but they are lying, and this is the fact, and nobody's interested. So there must be another way of dealing with this. And I do think that is why we have to start thinking about politics, about being political. Media, especially after the Berlin Wall coming down, became too obsessed with this objectivity, being balanced. I do think that they mix objectivity with neutrality. And journalists became so, afraid of politics, being part of politics or being perceived as political. This has to change, because you cannot beat this thing with fact-checking. This is a political narrative, a global one that you are fighting with. Therefore, you have to come with a political narrative, a counter-political narrative. Unfortunately, this is the case. I guess what we lost when we totally lost in Turkey is this. When you start responding to every outrageous act coming from the political power, you exhaust yourself. We are, as a country, exhausted, extremely exhausted, because we started, like it's happening with Trump now. The American audience is responding to, I don't know, this ban on travel ban. And then he's going to do something else next day. He's going to do another thing. And then, he's going to do something every day. You cannot fight this with fact-checking or responding with political, like going on streets, being angry, rage against Trump. This won't happen, because it will just exhaust your intellectual and physical energy as well. And I guess we lost in Turkey at that moment when we started fighting with every single thing that this government has been doing, because they don't stop. And it's not only coming from one source, it's coming from everywhere. One day your kid in the kindergarten has been told something outrageous by his teacher. One day it is, I don't know, something happening to Kurdish people. The other day something happening about education system. They don't stop, and you are overwhelmed with rage, and it easily turns to helplessness, the feeling of helplessness, and then you politicize this helplessness. Along the way, and this is one of the points we started losing, because we didn't see where laughter became the illusion of laughing off. Especially during Gezi uprising in Turkey in 2013, that was the biggest massive protest against Erdogan. People starting making jokes. They discovered the strength of humor, which was good, which was awesome, if you ask me. And I still remember the days, and I laugh. And those were the horrible days, but everybody was almost in a race to make a very good joke about the tragic thing, just to overcome the fear and the exhaustion. But then this humor turned to sarcasm. And then this whole thing invaded the intellectual space, making jokes about things, being sarcastic about political stuff. Mocking Erdogan became the central issue. And then it started the illusion of we can laugh off, Erdogan. We can laugh off anything. And then sarcasm and humor became a too comfortable shelter for political thought, for opposition. I think this was the moment we started losing our seriousness about the situation.
Okay.
And now there is nothing to laugh about, basically.
Definitely. Also, Erdogan started to attack not only Turkish journalists but also international correspondents, saying that we are
one
spies.
Of the lucky ones.
Yes, I am one of the lucky ones. Saying that we are liars, we are spies, and member of secret services, foreign secret services, working for overruling Erdogan's power. And
yeah, one time these are two extreme opposites. And I remember a serious article about me being PKK supporter and as well as Ergenekon supporter. Which is like impossible.
By the way, this is something serious. If I remember well, Takvim newspaper, few months ago, published an article with the names of some foreign correspondents. Among them, if I remember well, The Economist, the BBC one, and writing that they were telling lies and they were giving a wrong image of Turkey abroad. So, try to imagine how dangerous, how unfair, how unrespectful is something like that, and how worrisome, because sometimes they published also the picture of this journalist. And Takvim has not a very big audience, but it is read by quite fanatic people. We can easily say that is a right-wing newspaper. So it is, the situation is getting worse and worse, even for foreign correspondents. And we deal with Erdogan's post-truth every day, because during the so-called failed coup of last July, a lot of Erdogan supporters told us that we were exaggerating, we were writing lies, we were telling something different from what happened in Turkey. And just because on my tweet I just remembered that till 2010 Fethullah Gülen was the best friend of Erdogan. And they got angry for that. So it's becoming really more and more difficult doing this job in Turkey. But coming back to the post-truth.
I'm so lucky for not doing it.
Yeah. And by the way, allow me briefly to remember Gezi Park youth, because they were such good guys, and they were called Çapulcu. by the president, the current
Chapulare.
president.
There was this verb thing,
Yeah.
chapuling, chapulare. So
Yeah,
an
yeah, yeah,
Italian
yeah,
version
yeah,
was
yeah. I'm
chapulare.
chapuling all the day. No, and yes, and no, it was a very important moment, and most probably, at least for the time I lived in Turkey, the moment in which Turkey showed its best face, in my opinion.
Well, you know, your previous question, and now you're telling this, reminded me something very important, because I wrote this. I was still writing columns for another marginal socialist, not marginal, but socialist little newspaper. And I think this is where it became really hopeless for Turkey, or, you know, in my point of view. During Gezi uprising, there was this one kid who went out from his house to buy a loaf of bread.
Berkin Elvan.
Berkin Elvan. And he was 14 years old, and he was wounded in his head by a canister. And when he died, he was 15, and he was 45 kilos, and he was in coma for about a year before he was dead. So he has become the symbol of the basic human consciousness. This is a kid who was in coma for a year, and then he's dead, right? And President Erdogan went on to his own rally and made a speech about this kid. And he said he was a terrorist and his family was a terrorist. And he made his audience boo the family who just lost their kids. And after Berkin Elvan died, there was a massive demonstration which wasn't organized. One person, just with a loaf of bread in his hand, went on the street and started sitting, and then it became millions. And they were harshly, severely suppressed. There was extreme police violence during that demonstration. And I thought, this is where we lost it. This is the, you know, this is the bottom that you can, the lowest you can hit. Because it is a kid, it is dead, and you are making, you know, the Erdogan is making the audience boo the family, and then these people who just want to show their basic human concern about the situation goes on street, nothing violent, and then extreme police violence. I think that was the place that this polarization became really dangerous, because it is like, you know, it doesn't matter anymore if you're a human being, if you're a kid, if you are this or that. If you're against us, you have to die.
Also, we have to remember that Berkin Elvan became from an Alevi family, so there is a polarization between Sunni Islam and the Alevis.
And this is not the, you know, invention of AKP, but it dates back to years and years
absolutely,
ago.
Since the Ottoman Empire,
exactly.
unfortunately.
So, yeah.
But unfortunately, it is just a way to demonstrate how AKP is trying to revive former contraposition. I mean,
they are using every tension. This is a government, and I think such political movements are doing similar things. This is a government that could mobilize and deepen every polarization if it's working for their own interest. This is opportunism like you've never seen before, or maybe you have seen before, but yeah, this is opportunism.
It is really not an optimistic panel. So, but let's try not to find a solution, but just to think about that. Is this a process of the post-truth irreversible? How can we break this cycle, in your opinion?
I have a plan.
Okay,
so if
wonderful.
you join me, that
life goes better if you have a plan.
First of all, I'm not hopeless, and I don't believe in the word hope, because it's too fragile and too slippery, especially for the times we are going through now. So I believe in determination. I believe in determination of creating beauty. And this beauty can be political, aesthetic, artistic, or just daily life beauty. It doesn't matter. So in order to create beauty in these times of evil, I do think that we have to come up with a collective answer, because this is a global problem. So we have to come together to think about it. With my humble, merits, I am trying to come up with an answer about what could be done against this post-truth, against what we are going through in the world. But I started thinking that it is impossible to come up with an answer on individual level. We have to come together and think about it. And I am 100% sure, not hopeful, sure, that the answer will come from this collective. What I was thinking, I reported from Tahrir. I lived in Tunisia for a year with a wonderful lady here sitting. I've been, in Beirut, I've been living in Turkey through the Gezi uprising and so on. And I followed Spain and Greece. And when I was younger, I followed World Social Forum both in Porto Alegre and India. So, this is the plan. I think all these experiences that have been accumulating in Tahrir, in El Kasbah, in Greece, in Spain, in Turkey, and so on and so forth, should be brought together, and we have to come up with a new internazionale. It doesn't have to be as spectacular as the first one, but at least we could think about what could be done. And I call this project Andalusia Reloaded, because once Andalusia was the point where West touched the East and things flourished. And I think this Andalusia Reloaded project could give us the ultimate answer, if there is such an answer. Because in Tahrir, people try to fight the power with their bodies, and they gather experience there. They have a lot of experience. In Kasbah, something else happened. In Turkey, it was a step forward from the experience that has been accumulated. In Greece, something different happened. In Spain also, they managed to do the political, they managed to turn that political energy to political representation, up to a certain degree. And now, United States is going through the same thing, and luckily, they are more swift than we have been, and they are lucky with the Trump as well, because he's an obvious. He didn't come in disguise like it happened to us. So I think this intellectual energy is building up, and it has to come together to produce the counter-narrative that I have been speaking about earlier.
Okay, Ece, this is my last question, and then we will see if there are some from the audience. Which lesson foreign journalists and European public opinion can learn from Turkey?
I think I have been talking about this already. Don't think that this is about fact-checking. Don't think that you can convince people with your beautiful facts. It doesn't happen like that, because these are not people who do not know. These are people who do not want to know. We have to speak about human being and what human being have become. Because the human being we still have in our heads is a being who wants to know the truth, who makes rational decisions, and who's interested in his own interests, which is the perception of capitalism of human being. No, these are not true. This is a new human being. Well, it's not new. We are just, talking about it maybe in rather newly. But this is a human being who doesn't want to know the truth, who is not interested in facts. And more importantly, this is a human being who doesn't want to be an individual, who wants to be a part of a bigger thing. World has been through this process before in a different way during the Second World War, but this is new. This is the age of Kardashians. So we have to be as intelligent as them, I think.
So, Now we have 10, 15 minutes for a question from the audience. Don't be shy. There is one over there. 2, okay. 3, okay. Sì.
Can you give me a second then, please?
La signora molto coraggiosamente ha detto, insomma, sappiamo la sua storia e quello che farebbe, quale potrebbe essere la soluzione da adesso in poi per risolvere questo problema. Cosa potrebbe aver fatto in passato, se potete, magari 5 anni fa, 6 anni fa, quale potrebbe essere stata una strategia vincente per quanto riguarda il passato?
Okay. Maybe we can collect some questions and then, or you prefer to answer one by one?
I don't. What do you prefer? Well, I don't know. What do you prefer?
No, maybe we can collect.
collect.
Ok. Ce ne sono 3 qua davanti. No, c'era prima il ragazzo.
So as I was listening to Marta and Ece, I noticed that I noticed there are a lot of nodding heads, which is good, but it also means that we've maybe failed to engage the other side. I was a little disappointed this week to see that there weren't, say, pro-government publications here, people representing them. Have we failed to engage the other side? Have we isolated ourselves within our own communities?
Okay.
Hello. My question is about Turkish people living abroad. So I live in the Netherlands and I follow all the discussion they have with this incident. And my question is, what about the consensus to Erdogan of people living abroad, Turkish people living abroad that can actually vote, especially for the referendum of next week?
And that's it? Oh yeah.
Salve, come giudica la politica internazionale di Erdogan, visto che da un giorno sembra che stia con Putin e l'altro con Trump?
Ok. Okay. The last one, because then we are running out of time.
Who is?
So you have 2 minutes for each answer.
Ok.
Ma dunque io sono un avvocato che si occupa anche di diritti umani e uno scrittore. Mi interesserebbe molto tentare di comprendere quali sono, secondo voi, i meccanismi psicologici che portano a questi consensi così allargati e totalitari, che sono obiettivamente purtroppo nefastamente maggioritari e che non si riescono a scalfire. La domanda è: possibile che dall'altra parte quali sono le chiavi di lettura? Su questo davvero c'è da interrogarsi, no? Sono le stesse che portavano alle folle oceaniche sotto i balconi dei dittatori della seconda guerra mondiale o c'è qualcosa di diverso?
Ok, grazie. Direi che purtroppo non possiamo accogliere altre domande perché abbiamo 10 minuti e sono domande abbastanza corpose. Scusatemi.
5 and 6 years ago, we could. This is not self-beating, but I do blame the intellectuals about producing legitimization for this government, because it messed up the whole balance of the country and entire balance in the media as well. So 5 or 6 years ago, we could have been more ethical, more decent about our political stand. You'll see a lot of people, now you are seeing a lot of people writing about Turkey, criticizing Turkey on international media, Turkish people or Kurdish people. Some of these people have been supporting this government like there is no tomorrow 5, 6 years ago still. So I think, this is the thing that comes to me, right away when I'm asked about, what could have done, what could have we done, and so on. Yeah, that one is important. And I don't know how to do it. For instance, now for other countries, I cannot really come up with an advice. But I think the fear created of okay, this was the thing. People who knew better 5-6 years ago or 10 years ago, people who saw what's to come, were excommunicated because of their criticism towards Erdogan and AKP. Excommunicated from the intelligentsia. And I myself have been a victim of that, so I can tell that it was, it scared the shit out of me, because being excommunicated means you're alone. I was and I spent some time on my own in Turkey in that sense, like, there were so few people who were saying the things that I was saying. And then on, it became many people, which is nice. Yeah, I think more courage for those who see what's going to happen, and, more intellectual decency and ethics. Engaging the other side is my favorite topic, and I am saying this has been the phenomena, 10 years ago in Turkey. Engaging the other side, let the other side speak as well. But this other side is not interested in speaking to you.
Absolutely.
This dialogue, the word dialogue, is such a sneaky thing, because it has been sanctified, this concept of dialogue. But it doesn't work like that. Even if you are willing to be part of the dialogue, this other side is not, do not have the same intentions as you do. So this dialogue, and every time this happens, turns to you respecting him. Yeah. Because this understanding the other, there's a very, very, maybe too thin a line between understanding the other and respecting it. And it's all because of the identity politics that I have been speaking about earlier. So we have to be really careful about this engaging the other. And about that as well, I don't know why they ask the question a lot. Do we understand the other? Okay, my question is, do we understand us? Like, do we engage among ourselves enough? I don't think we do. I think we should speak to each other like, we as in people who are capable of critical thinking, by the way. I'm not talking about leftists or whatever. I'm not talking about ideology. I'm talking about people who are capable of critical thinking. They have to speak to each other, because actually this is what we need more than engaging with the other. Turkey's people living abroad. Oh yeah, there are more and more people going out of Turkey, and this is like the educated, secular, bourgeois, middle class or upper middle class people who are not in good terms with the current political situation. And I am detecting a new phenomena. It is especially happening in Germany. People who are living there and who are more or less in good terms with the Western style, I wouldn't say that word, democracy, Western democracy, who is in good terms with the social state they're enjoying and so on, they are now turning against those people who are voting for AKP. These people, AKP has a very strong hold in European countries, in European capitals. And the Turkish people who are critical of Erdogan are like really angry with these people, because they're not only enjoying the social state that they are living in that country, but they also, determine the destiny of those who are living in Turkey. They don't suffer from that, yet they have a right to determine the destiny. So yeah, this is a new phenomena. And there's a German comedian, stand-up guy, awesome, and he openly, in Turkish, cursed to those Turkish people in Germany voting Erdogan, voting AKP. So this is a, upcoming tension. Erdogan's internet. Huh?
Erdogan foreign policy.
Erdogan foreign policy.
We need 1 hour only to discuss about
Exactly.
that. And 1 hour is not enough.
I just wanted to say that when he got himself into trouble with Putin, I was extremely angry. I was like, how can you do this? Of all people, you found Putin to, put yourself in trouble. They're going to kill us. I don't know if there is a policy. It's like Trump, today this, today that. So there is no consistent policy. There is just, whatever he needs that day. So I'm a lawyer as well by education. And the psychological mechanism behind this, supporters of such populist, totalitarian and authoritarian regimes is one of my, questions that I keep asking myself. And it is true that it is different from the Second World War. This time, this fascism did not come in uniforms, but it came in different clothes. So the psychological mechanism, it's a very long topic. But I do think that the world has been through a forced, there is no such word, but ignorization. Like they have been made ignorant in order to this system to carry on. Therefore, all these people now know that this democracy that people, the establishment is talking about is nothing for them. It doesn't work for them. And I think when there is no social state, there cannot be any democracy. And this is what we are seeing. I'm like, this is the roughest statement I've ever made, but actually there is a connection. And that the fact that there is no social state, the real social state, in many of the countries that they are now facing authoritarianism, rising authoritarianism, is actually the reason that these people are supporting these governments. But it's not the first time in history people are supporting those people who are actually harmful to them. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But this is a very, very long topic.
Yeah, and I think that at least for the Turkish case, the national identity plays an important role.
Exactly.
But unfortunately, our time is finished. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marta.
Ece Temelkuran.
Lovely.
Yeah, really, for me as well.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks for sharing your thoughts. I think that we have a lot of issues to think about, and for me as a journalist and all the other colleagues here, I think that you have to look at our conscience when you do our job more than before, because press in Turkey played a very important role to deliver this posthumous message, and it is something can happen everywhere.
Yeah. Thank you, Marta.
Thank you so much to everyone.
Thank you. They videotaped it, right?
Yeah.
Hello.
I work for CNN. It was interesting what you were sharing about us.
Oh my God, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
CNN guys have heard